So let's talk about and just share a little something with you here. How to present your thoughts under pressure with clarity and power. Clarity and power. So I'm going to talk about clarity and power just a little later. First, we're going to talk about how to present your thoughts under pressure. Now, what's an example of what we're talking about when we say present your thoughts under pressure? Some situations that you might be faced with are meetings. Okay, you're in a meeting and you're feeling the pressure because of the people who are there. I've talked to some people who they're in a meeting. It depends on how many people are there and who is there. That is the position of those who are there, right? That is what determines the level of pressure that they're experiencing. So if there's just a few people, often they're fine expressing their thoughts, asking questions, answering questions. There's a lot of people, all of a sudden they begin to experience more pressure. If there are supervisors or leaders there, then they experience even more pressure. Sometimes it depends on the stakes. What are the stakes? Are they high stakes meetings? Is something that you're sharing going to have an impact on the company, on your position, on a sale or whatever? So that can increase the pressure. Sometimes it's when you actually have to stand up and make a presentation. Other times, it could be something as simple as when you're ordering coffee, but we're not going to talk about that today. But other times it's when you're not prepared, right? And it's not because you were supposed to prepare. It's just that someone asked you a question and you weren't prepared to answer it at that time. So that increases the pressure. Sometimes you did prepare to present, to share some information, but they ask you a question and you don't have the information at your fingertips. You don't believe that you know the answer to the question that they're asking you. So you've prepared, but you're asked a question. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? I'm not prepared to answer that. I don't have the answer. That can increase the pressure, right? So how do you handle that? How do you present yourself well under pressure? Present your thoughts. How do you articulate your thoughts clearly, smoothly? How do you articulate them with clarity and with power? And we'll talk about what we mean by clarity and power in just a few minutes. So the first question is, why would you want to be able to present yourself, present your thoughts under pressure with clarity and power? Why would you want to? So let me just go ahead and get a few responses from you. Type into the chat box. Why would you want to be able to present your thoughts, your ideas, right? Your opinions? Sometimes you have to argue, right? Argue your point. Why do you think it would be important to you in your career to be able to do that under pressure? Why? What's your motivation for wanting to do that? Okay, so someone said, improve self-esteem. Okay, so you might feel better about yourself if you're able to present your thoughts clearly and powerfully. What are some other reasons? Boost credibility, right? Okay, so what does that mean, to boost credibility? So people will see you as being more credible. They'll see you as being more trustworthy, right? They'll trust what you're saying more. They'll see you as someone who can take advantage of leadership positions, leadership opportunities. They'll see you as an authority, right? When you're able to present your thoughts under pressure. Okay, what are some other reasons? We need to let people know that you have the stuff, all right, to be heard and understood, to be able to present myself, to sell myself. Okay, all right, so great, awesome. So boosting credibility, to be able to present yourself. So you have an interview, you're selling yourself, right, in that interview. Maybe even you're selling a product. So you need to be able to present those ideas clearly, smoothly, confidently, to let people know that you have the stuff. So you may be super intelligent. Dr. Ismail says this all the time. Might be brilliant. He's around brilliant scientists and doctors all the time. But some of the folks that he's around aren't necessarily able to present themselves well. And so it detracts from their ability to move up and to move forward and to really impact the world with their knowledge and their expertise. They have the stuff, but they're not able to get it out, right, as clearly as they could. Okay, great. What else? Share ideas and being able to finally be confident in front of others. Okay, so you may have some ideas, some things that you really want to get across and you need to get across that other people need to hear, right? They're waiting for it. They actually need it for their job, for their life, right? And you've got those ideas, and if you're not able to present it in high pressure situations or clearly, confidently, then they're not going to get it. They're not going to benefit from it. Okay, great. Wonderful, wonderful ideas. Wonderful input. Very, very accurate. So thank you so much for that. So let's take a look then at the first and really the major key to presenting yourself, presenting your thoughts clearly with clarity and power under pressure. The first thing that you want to do is to remove yourself from the equation. Now, what do I mean by that? So you want to remove yourself from the equation. Now, before I go on, in fact, as I talk about this, I'd like to hear what you guys think. What you think I mean by remove yourself from the equation. So remember, we're talking about high pressure situations. We've already discussed what some of those might be. Let's just say you're in a meeting. It could be a meeting with one person or 10 people, 100 people. It could be a presentation, and it's high pressure. And I'm saying that one way to handle this high pressure speaking situation is to remove yourself from the equation. Now, tell me what you think I mean by that. What do I mean by remove yourself from the equation? Type the answer in. All right, here we go. Got some great answers coming. Let me see. We got put emphasis towards something or someone else. Put an emphasis towards something or someone else. Great. All right, we're going to talk about something or someone else. Actually, in the second part of this, we're going to talk about that. That's very good. Model someone else and remove yourself. Modeling. So there's that word. Right? Model. Okay, focus on the content, not on yourself. Very good. We're going to talk about that. That's very much related to putting an emphasis towards something or someone else. Not worrying about what others think of you. Okay, so one of the big things that people experience is a fear of judgment. When we start thinking about and focusing on what others might be thinking about us, what they might say about us, we lose our train of thinking, we lose our clarity, we can lose our momentum, we can become very cloudy, right? For some people, they actually start to stutter or stammer, stumble over their words. They're not able to think and speak as clearly and smoothly as they normally would, right? Even just a few minutes before. So when they start worrying about the judgment of others, what others, and they might not even be thinking this, but you're worried about what they might think, it can distract you and derail you. So very good. What else? Okay, so not worrying about what others think. Don't focus on what you'll say. So yeah, good. So in other words, you're saying, don't focus on the specific, well, I don't know if this is what you're saying. So one thing is not to focus on the specific words. Sometimes it's not even to focus so much on exactly what you want to say, to allow it to flow. Sometimes we talk about speak without thinking, right? Usually people say, well, always think before you speak, but that's not always true. Sometimes it's better to let it flow, to have an intention in what you want to say, but don't pre-plan what you're going to say, to let it flow. So Sometimes you need to speak without thinking. Sometimes you speak while you're thinking, right? And then sometimes you do have to think before you speak. So that's very interesting there as well. Focus on the audience and how you can deliver your message with maximum impact. Yes, we're going to talk about that. When in the moment, I have to talk, you forget all the training. Okay, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at now. Thinking about serving the others, about sharing your value and thoughts with the audience. Wonderful. Exactly. So let's dig into this a little more. Remove yourself from the equation. So what are we talking about? Well, one way to remove yourself from the equation is what we call modeling. Okay, modeling. Now, what is modeling? What does this mean? So what it means to remove yourself from the equation means to use this as what we call a positive distractor, a positive distractor. In fact, I'm going to draw just a little equation. So let's call this an unsuccessful speaking experience, right? Unsuccessful speaking experience equals the old you, the old you. So here you have an unsuccessful speaking experience. Why is it unsuccessful? Because you've allowed yourself to get distracted because you're thinking about what others are saying, you're thinking about it, you're anticipating words, whatever the situation might be. It's an unsuccessful speaking experience, and this is the old you. What we want to do is have a successful speaking experience. How do we do that? Well, we actually remove you and we substitute a model. We remove you from the equation and you substitute a model. So what exactly does this mean? What it means is that you shift your focus, your thinking, your attention to someone that you admire how they speak. I really like the way this person speaks. I like their speaking style. But it's not just the way they speak. You also admire the confidence that they project, the authority that they bring to the table, their presence, the way they articulate their thoughts so cleanly and so clearly. All right, you admire that about them. You may even enjoy and like the content that they're sharing with you. So when you model, you're going to model primarily three things. You're going to model them, or you're going to make what's called a mental imprint. That is, you study your model and you ask yourself, what is my model thinking? So you're watching your model speak, right? And you say, what is my model thinking right now? Now, you may not be able to ask your model, but you can surmise, how is my model thinking? What are they thinking about right now? What do I think that they're thinking? All right, what is my model thinking? Second, how's my model feeling? Is my model feeling confident, right? Is my model feeling calm, feeling relaxed? And then third, how's my model acting? Their behavior. Are they moving slowly and smoothly? Are they tight? Are they tense? Are they speaking real fast? Are they speaking smoothly? Do they have great voice inflection, great body language? Let's go back to the thoughts a little. What's my model thinking? Is my model thinking about him or herself? Are they worried about what other people are saying? Maybe, but probably not. Or are they focused, like you guys said, on the audience? Are they focused on how they can deliver value to the audience? How they can make sure that the audience understands what they're saying, how they can invite the audience into their piece, how they can make sure that the ideas and thoughts they're sharing make sense, right? Are they thinking about that, or are they thinking about themselves? Okay, so you make a mental imprint, you make a emotional imprint of your model, how your model feels, and you make a physical imprint of how your model acts and how they speak. So how do you make this imprint? Well, how do you and I normally make an imprint of the things that we observe around us? This comes from what we call observational learning. It used to be called social learning theory. Now it's called social cognitive theory, from a guy named Howard Bandura. You can look him up. He's like 90-some years old now. And he was one of the first pioneers of this. And the beautiful thing about modeling is that you're already equipped to do it from birth. You're already equipped to do it. So when someone says, well, modeling doesn't work, it's not good, they don't know what they're talking about because, as I always say, when you were growing up, much of what you learn, and even much of what we learn now, believe it or not, we learn by observing other people around us. In fact, some of what we learn, we don't even have to practice. We just learn it by observing, by watching. So we learn by the things that we see on video, by things that we listen to, right? By things that people around us do, and obviously by things that we do, that we practice, that we imitate ourselves. Sometimes we learn things or subconsciously, just by being around people who are doing certain things. That's why they say it's very important that you watch your reference group, the people that you hang around with. This is why I always say that you should be very, very careful, very, very careful about hanging out with people who stutter, right? Why would you not want to hang out in groups of people who stutter or stammer, like stuttering and stammering groups? Why would you not want to do that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Go ahead and type that in. I'm going to keep talking, but I'd love to hear why you would not want to hang out, right? Like be in groups, go to conferences with a bunch of people who stutter or stammer. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with us, with people that have stuttered, but why would you not want to hang out? Let me just kind of give you some reasons. Well, one is because you're literally making an imprint. You're continuing to reinforce that way of thinking and that behavior. And I've watched it happen. All right, you will end up modeling in reverse. You may adopt more negative mindset because because of mirror neurons. Exactly. So it's not that you're trying to get away from, you're trying to run away from. No, what you're trying to do is to make sure that you're controlling your environment, right? Now, if you grow up, if someone's in your household, you just can't help that. You know, your father, your mother, your brothers, sisters, aunts, and uncles who come over. But whenever you can, you limit the amount of time that you spend, again, unless it's your parents or your brother or something like that. You limit the amount of time, so you don't go join groups where you're listening and you're watching people struggling with their speech. What do you do instead? You go and you join groups and you get around people who are making a positive impression, right? A positive imprint on your way of thinking, on your mindset, on your speaking identity, and on your way of speaking. Does this make sense? So you want to study people who speak well, right? Study people who speak well and imitate them. Observational learning, modeling, because you're doing it automatically anyway, right? So what we're talking about is a structured, systematic way to actually transform or change the way you speak, change the way you feel, remember the emotional imprint, and change the way you think. How is my model thinking right now? So you study, you make an imprint of your model, and you remove yourself from the equation. So let's talk about a specific instance, because modeling can work for you immediately. Like sometimes you'll see people change the way that they speak almost instantly. How does this work? You're in a meeting. You've got to present something. Someone's asked you a question and you're not sure of the answer. You weren't prepared for it. Or they ask a question and everybody's looking at you, supervisors are there, or whatever. So you're feeling really anxious about it. So, and Dr. Ismail will talk to you about this, right? Is you ask yourself, okay, it's not me, it's my model. I'm going to step out of the way and I'm going to let my model speak now. How would my model say this? How would my model act right now? How would my model feel right now, right? And then you act the way your model would act. You try to feel. Sometimes it's difficult to change our feelings, like we talked about in the last webinar, but you can change what you say to yourself and you can change the way that you're acting. So you can act your way in the feeling. So how would my model act right now? Well, my model would move his or her hands this way. My model would speak slower. They would start slow. Or my model has a lot of energy, right? My model would speak proactively. My model would take their time as they're speaking. They wouldn't feel rushed. My model would be thinking about how they can give an answer that's going to add value to the discussion or to this audience or to this organization. That's what my model would be thinking. Now, here's the beauty of what's happening. When you take yourself out of the equation and you substitute your model, and you can use modeling, and people have used modeling for everything from music to leadership to art to public speaking. When you substitute your model, you no longer have time to be distracted. Some of you said, when you're worried about what the audience will think. Well, when you're focused on delivering the information, answering the question, whatever it is, the interview, whatever, like your model would, you simply don't have the mental bandwidth to consistently, constantly worry about what the audience is thinking. I hope I don't mess up on this word, and I got to make sure that I say the right thing, or else. You don't have time to think about that. You're thinking about high performance. You're thinking about speaking and delivering this message, presenting your thoughts under pressure like your model would. The other beauty of modeling is this. Now, I'm going to go just a little deeper here, and that is when you're in the equation, the old your brain instantly goes back to your memories, your previous speaking experiences. You've heard me talk about this before. So you're in a high pressure speaking situation. Your brain goes back to look for patterns because your brain is very, very efficient. So it doesn't want to have to rethink how you're going to behave, how you're going to answer this question, how you're going to present. It goes back and say, how have I performed in the past? How have I performed in the past? So it goes back, maybe looks and says, oh, okay, the last time I got nervous, I got anxious, I messed up, right? This is happening really, really quickly, often on a somewhat subconscious level. So it says, well, this is how we behave. This is how we performed in the past. Unsuccessful speaking experience, right? So then it pulls that forward real quick, and immediately it says, well, this is how you're supposed to behave now. Right? Even though you don't want to, that's what the brain does because it's more efficient for you to behave that way, right? So that's the old you. So the old you has these old memories. When you remove yourself from the equation and you substitute your model, you are not thinking about your old experiences, right? Everything that you have, in fact, your cortex, we call your frontal, your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain now is in charge, and it's focused on your model and on delivering the information like your model, right? So it's taking over your automatic responses, getting nervous, getting anxious, going cloudy, right? It's taking over now. And there is going to be a resistance here. It's not going to be easy. But the more you do it, the easier it will become. And what will happen is now you will have successful speaking experiences, and it will be what we call the new you, right? Which will eventually become the current you. Okay. So you'll go from modeling, and Dr. Ismail will explain this. You'll go from modeling to like having to consciously model to not having to consciously model, and to you're just accumulating so many successful speaking experiences that now when your brain goes back to say, how do we perform in this kind of a speaking situation? We call this self-efficacy. It is your belief in how you can handle certain situations and how you're going to perform and how successful you'll be. It's your belief in that, right? So when you have all of these successful experiences, then you know that you can handle it. No matter how you feel, no matter how anxious or nervous you are, you still know that you can have it. You believe that you can handle it. But until you have that body of experience, those memories, and it's really hard to believe that you can speak well, right? So how can you leapfrog? How can you get to the place where you've accumulated these successful speaking experiences? You remove. Now, here's a word that we want you to remember, and let's see if I put this here modeling. So you temporarily remove yourself from the equation. It's not permanent, right? You're not completely becoming someone else, right? Okay. But in that moment, and as much as possible, you want to become someone else in that moment. Now here's the thing about modeling. You want to model someone that is in alignment with your ideal self. You want to model someone that you admire, that you could see yourself becoming like that person. You could see yourself speaking that way. So let me give you an example. There are a couple people that maybe you've heard of before. One guy's name is Tony Robbins. And then there's another guy who was my model, Brian Tracy. Very, very different speakers, right? Tony Robbins, a lot of energy, boom, people love him, great, extremely successful. But he's not in alignment with my personality, with my speaking style, with my energy. Brian Tracy, on the other hand, is. And his speaking style is different now. But it was in more alignment with, wow, I could see myself speaking like that. Tony Robbins, I can't see myself speaking like that. So it would have been inauthentic for me to try to speak like Tony Robbins. That would have been inauthentic. But it would have been and was authentic for me to try to speak like Brian Tracy, because I could see myself speaking that way. Right? I could see a vision. That was my ideal self. Does that make sense? So not all of you are going to want to model me. You're going to have other people that you might want to model. But make sure that you can see yourself speaking that way. Now, here's a danger. You may be a person who speaks really, really fast. Dr. Ismail was one, spoke super, super fast. And so you want to be careful not to model someone that's super high-strung, super animated, speaks really, really fast, because it's not going to help you. One of the things that we have to do is if you speak really, really fast and you're not able to speak well or you're getting stuck, you're going to need to slow yourself down. Now, you don't necessarily need to speak as slow as me. You don't have to have the same kind of energy level as me. You can have a higher energy level. You can speak faster than I do, right? But modeling someone that speaks slower is going to bring you more to the middle. It's going to help you. So be careful about if you see someone, you just love their energy, love the way they speak, but you speak fast, you need to find someone that speaks a bit slower than that to bring you over here. I hope that makes perfect sense. So here's the magic. You temporarily remove yourself from the situation and you focus your attention on how that other person would perform in this particular speaking situation. And you do your best to perform in that way, okay? And then the more that you practice this is why we actually have a systematic process. It's a modeling process for you to practice speaking like your model, okay? And when you practice that way, it starts to become second nature. Your brain knows how to do it. Not just presentations, but also in conversations. So I would have clients ask, well, how do I model in a conversation? I've seen how you speak in a presentation. Okay, I can do that. But what about in a conversation? So I said, okay, I want you to just tell me what you've done today or what you're going to do tomorrow, and say it the way you think I would say it. And 99.9% of the time, they're able to do it, right? Your brain just knows how a person speaks, and if you've been practicing, then you practice that way. Think of it like a dial. When you're presenting, you turn the dial all the way up, right? You're speaking more proactively, you're more animated. When you're conversing, you turn the dial down some, so you don't have to speak the same way. So that's just a little tip for you when you are getting into modeling. Those of you that are thinking about getting into the Pro 90 speech system, either the basic course, or if you want to accelerate the process working with me personally, you're going to be delving deep into modeling. So I'm just sharing a very, very important tip with you now. So understand that the key, or one very, very powerful and very, very natural way to handle pressure is to temporarily remove yourself from the situation and substitute yourself with your model to model, okay? Now, here's here's something else. Here's something else. Here's another way. And this way, you guys alluded to this as well. So you focus on something that we call Vic. Some of you have heard me talk about this, right? And then we'll wrap up here, right? And we'll get Dr. Ismail to come on and share his experience. He's been, all around the world, and he's been speaking in all kinds of different situations. He'll tell you about some of them. And he's an expert at modeling, and now he's an expert at speaking, and he'll share that with you. But I'm talking about how do you speak with now clarity and confidence, or clarity and power. So Vic, the V stands for, let's see if we can get, I want to see if some of you guys remember. What does the V stand for? What's the V stand for? Someone type that in. Yes, value. Okay, the V stands for value. Now, I want you to get this. This is a very, very simple thinking tool. It's nothing complex at all. It can just be in the back of your mind. When you're speaking, when you're under pressure, you're thinking about your model, right? Remember, it's just temporary. You don't have to do this forever. You think about your model, and you're thinking about how would my model, or how does my model, or how is my model thinking? What are they thinking about right now? They're probably thinking about the value that they can offer in this conversation. I usually say Rick or Vic. Rick means relevancy. Is this relevant to our discussion now? Let's talk about you're in a meeting. So is what I'm about to say valuable? Does it have value? Is it important? Is it bringing something of importance, right, to the conversations? It's something that they need to hear, okay? Value. What does the I stand for? Who can tell me what the I stands for? All right, who can tell me what the I stands for? Impact, yes. The I stands for impact. Okay, so you're speaking, you're focused on how does my model speak right now? What my model thinking about? All right, so now impact is you want to speak in such a way that you are engaging your audience. You're engaging your audience. And I'm still learning. I'm still improving the way that I speak, right? But in the back of my mind, as I'm looking at the camera, and if I were talking to a live audience, it would be even better because there's an energy that you can draw from your audience. Your audience can give you energy, and then you can push that energy back out, project that energy onto your audience. This is kind of a strategy, if you will, that speakers use. You draw energy sometimes from certain people in your audience, and you take that energy and you project it back out. So because I'm speaking to a camera, I'm imagining you. I'm imagining you out there, and I'm drawing energy from who I believe you to be and what you're probably doing and what you're thinking right now, and your needs. Like, what is it that you want and need to hear? Getting energy from the topic and the subject and the value and how I think this is going to help you. And so I'm thinking about how can I impact you or engage you? So this goes to mostly your speaking style. And that's why modeling here is very important, because if you've been studying, you've been making an imprint of how your model speaks, and you've been practicing hand gestures, facial expressions, body language, voice inflection, right? Then you're improving your style, proactive speaking skills. We won't go into that today, but proactive speaking skills. So you're improving your speaking style. So if you're speaking the way your model speaks, you're making sure that you're grabbing your audience, right? That you're inflecting, that you're emphasizing certain things, that you're using hands, that you're not just standing there and speaking like this, boring people to death, right? So you're making sure that you're impacting them. Why? Because if you're not impacting them, if you're not holding their attention, they're not going to get the value. They're not going to pay attention. They're not even going to hear what you're saying. So you got to make sure that you're impacting, you're grabbing their attention with your speaking style. Now, what's the C stand for? What's the C stand for? Who can clarity. Yes. I have my new assistant, Pooja, who's helping us out here. So clarity. Now, clarity has two parts to it. One part is style, but the other part is structure. So let me just jot that down for you. Okay, style and structure. And here's what I mean, and then we'll wrap this up because I want to make sure we give Dr. Ismail enough time to share. Very, very amazing guy. Clarity. Am I speaking clearly? Am I articulating? Am I enunciating? Am I pronouncing right? Am I speaking clear? Am I speaking too fast where you can't understand what I'm saying? Or am I speaking too slow where it's causing you to drift off? Some people don't like my speaking style. I think it's too slow. I'm not animated enough. That's okay. Not everyone's going to love your speaking style, but there's going to be people who do, obviously. So style. Am I speaking clearly where people can understand it? Is my volume too high? Is my volume too low? People used to tell me, can you raise your volume? Can you speak up a little? So I just raise it up just a little. Okay. Structure. Is what I'm saying easy to follow? Is it easy to understand? Right? Is it clearly structured, clearly outlined? 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. Here's why. Here's what. Okay. So you're not going to be perfect all the time, but the more you keep this in the back of your mind, I want to make sure I'm clear. I want to make sure people can understand me, right? So you talk about all those factors, modeling. If my model's clear, if my model speaks and articulates his thoughts and enunciates his words, then I want to speak like that. If she is able to impact people because people can understand what she's saying, I want to speak like her, right? Structure. Is my model able to explain things in a very clear manner? Then I want to be able to do that too. So when you model, you keep these things in mind. And here's the beauty of it. When you're focused on this, which includes modeling, you can't be focused on things that are distracting you, on anticipating words, on the judgment of the audience, on who's there and who's watching you and hoping that you say the right thing, because if you don't, you're going to look silly, right? You can't be focused on that because you're focused on your job at hand, which is to deliver supreme value, superior value to your audience, even if your audience is one person. So do you see how when you remove yourself from the equation and you focus on this while you're speaking, it's in the back of your mind, believe it or not, what begins to happen is you actually are able to think clearly and to speak more powerfully, more confidently. How do I know this? Well, not only have I done it, but I've helped many, many other people do it. We're going to bring someone on in just a minute. And I'm working with someone right now who she doesn't stutter, right? But what happens is when she's speaking in high-level meetings, high-stakes meetings, she used to only deliver a small percentage of what she was thinking because she was overanalyzing it. She was thinking about making sure she said the right thing and hopefully other people would accept. Now she's using modeling, right? She's modeling. And now she says that now she's able to see some changes in her ability to better articulate her thoughts, to present her thoughts and ideas, because she's taken herself on the other page, taken herself out of the equation now. Does this make sense? So I'm watching it work right now, and I've seen it work before, okay? So, Dr. Ismail, let's go ahead and bring you in because we want to hear from you. And as you come on, because sometimes I think it takes a little bit of time for you to come on. Myra, if you can you go down there and just share the handouts? I want to share the handout with everyone. Also, I want to invite you guys.
So
turn that down.
I want to invite you guys, for those of you that are watching.
So I want to invite you guys, for those of you that
you're
are
in
watching,
a position where you want to accelerate
to
your progress.
if
you're
you're
kind
in
of
a
working on
position
your
where you
own,
want to accelerate
and you've been seeing some progress, but
your
it's been taking
progress,
more
you've been
time
kind of
than what
working
you
on
want.
your own,
I want to invite you to
and
book
you've been
a
seeing some
session
progress, but
with
it's
me.
been taking more
Okay,
time than what you
and
want.
I'm just going to share
I'm going to
that
invite
now.
you to book a
Book an
session
assessment
with me.
session with me.
Okay,
And we're going to talk about where you are
now.
now,
Book an
where you
assessment
want to be,
session with
and
me,
how we can help you get
and we're
there.
going to talk about where you are
We know
now,
holidays are
where you
coming
want
up,
to be,
But you want to go ahead, and if you know that
we
you
know
want to work
holidays
with
are
me
coming
one-on-one,
up, but you want to go
you can,
ahead, and if you know that you want to
work with me, and you can start now,
you can
right? Or you can put down a deposit now.
work
That
with
is, you
me,
can
and
pay
you can
half,
start
pay the other
now,
half, and start in
right?
January.
Or
So
you
you
can
can
put
start
down a
now,
deposit now,
pay
that
now, and
is, you
start
can pay
now,
half and pay the
or
other
pay
half and
now and
start
start
in
in
January. So you
January,
can
pay
start
half
now,
now, and pay
pay
the other
now, and
half in
start now,
January. So we do
or
have a
pay now
couple
and start in
payment plans
January, pay
for
half
those of
now,
you
and pay
that
the other
know
half in
that this is
January.
what you want to
So
do.
you do have a
Those of
couple
you that are
payment
not
plans
sure,
for those of you that
we're
know
also
that
going to
this is
share
what
with
you
you
want to do. Those of you that are not sure,
the ability.
we're also going to share with you
Okay, I'm going to
the
share with you
ability.
the ability to
Okay.
check
to
out
share
the
with you
self-study.
the
So let's
ability
have Dr. Ismail
to
come in, and I'm going to
check
mute
out the
myself
self-study. So let's have
here.
Dr. Ismail come in, and I'm going to mute myself.
Hi, Dr. Ismail, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto this talk. I think for me, one of the most important components of the Pro-90D system and what you teach is that you have to establish a new speaking identity. And I think that is crucial and critical. And anything you want to take home from what you were saying this whole hour is that you need to learn to create and to make a new speaking identity. Why? Remember, when you're disfluent and you're not speaking well and you're stuttering and stammering, there are two components. There's the physical component and there's a psychological component. And the physical and the psychological component kind of interplay with each other. So when you take tips and tricks and all of that kind of thing to try and improve your speech, what you are actually doing, you are trying to address the physical aspect of your speech. You are not looking at all at the psychological aspect of your speech. But when you change your speaking identity, when you create a new speaking identity, when you remove yourself from the equation, as you very eloquently said, what you basically are doing is that you are now addressing the psychological component of your speech. Now, I'm sure a lot of you had this experience that when you are confident, and when you feel good about yourself, when you wake up in the morning and you think everything is going fine, your speech automatically goes well. You don't think about words anymore, you don't stumble, you don't get stuck, you don't block. All of those things are great. And that is because the psychology is right. Sometimes when you wake up in the morning and your psychology isn't great and you're feeling down and you're kind of distracted, you find you're stumbling on words that you never stumbled upon before. And that's because the psychology isn't right. So it is always this interplay between the physical self and the psychological self. So the tips and the tricks and the strategies are important. They are really important, and they are short-term. They are short-term. The problem with that is if you don't address the psychology of the disfluency, what happens is that it will work for you in some speaking situations and it won't work for you in others. So in a very high pressure situation, you'll find that your tips and your tricks isn't really working because now it's all gone through the window. But if you get the psychology right, you'll find that even in high pressure situations, you'll be able to speak clearly and you will develop consistency. So what I'm trying to say is that when you are addressing the physical self, you have to do it in the context of the psychological self. And the psychological self, and when you want to address that, it is when you remove yourself from the equation, when you model. Modeling is a very easy way to improve your speech, because what happens is when you model, you concentrate on how that person is speaking, his mood, how he thinks, his rhythm, his rate, and all of that. So it distracts you from your disfluent self. And the more you model, the more fluent you will be. You'll speak more clearly. And what happens when you do that, you start developing new neurological pathways in your brain. Remember, speaking fluently is a skill. It's like learning a new language. So when you learn a new language, what are you doing? You're learning a new skill, you're developing new pathways in your brain, and all of that kind of thing. So when you are learning to speak fluently, that is the kind of attitude that you must have, that you know what, I'm learning something new. I want to develop a new skill. And it becomes a habit. Remember, when it becomes a habit, what happens is that it takes anything from 18 days to 360 days. Sometimes it takes a full year. The more complex the skill that you want to learn, the longer it's going to take. And speaking is a complex skill. And therefore, because it is complex, it will take a much longer time for you to develop a habit. But once you develop a habit, what happens is that it then sinks into your basal ganglia, into your cerebellum, into the limbic system, and things like that. And you now start to develop automaticity. So when you develop automaticity, you are now not thinking about words. You are not thinking about what you want to say. And that has worked for me fantastically. Because, as I said, I always define myself as pre-Pro 90D and post-Pro 90D. Now I stop thinking about words. It's not part of my equation at all. When I'm going to speak, and I've now been speaking internationally, I've been around the world, I've been speaking at conferences, I was speaking nationally, I've been taking part in scientific debates. And for me, that is really, really important, because I obviously have to defend the concepts that I write about. If you can't defend your concepts and what you want to say, it's not going to work for you. So my kind of star in the scientific world has risen a lot since I can verbalize well, I'm eloquent, I can say what I want to say, I'm not stumbling, and that's helped me tremendously. But there's a path. It takes time, it takes work. You have to model, you have to practice. There's informal modeling, there's formal modeling, and there's a whole lot of stuff that you got to do. But eventually you will get there. But you just got to focus, you got to concentrate, and once you focus and you concentrate and you get your mind right, you will get there. Always remember there's an interplay between the physical self and the psychological self. The physical self is what you see outside when you are laboring to speak and all of that. The psychological self you don't see, but sometimes it's the psychological self that's probably more important than the physical self, because if you get the psychology right, the physical self will take care of itself. And that is getting the mind right by modeling and changing your speaking identity, your self-concept, and how you see yourself. And it's really important, because when you see yourself as somebody that's fluent, when you stumble, or you have a block or something to that effect, it's much easier for you to get over that than when you see yourself as someone that doesn't speak clearly. Because if you see yourself as being not fluent, and you hit a bump or you become disfluent, it takes a much longer time for you to get over it than when you see yourself as being fluent. And that is the secret of the Pro 90D system. And you have to make that transition. That's absolutely crucial. I can't hear you.
Turn your mic off, Dr. Ismail, right now, and hopefully there's no echo. Guys, if there's an echo, let me know. So Dr. Ismail, I'm going to ask you a question. No echo, great. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll turn your mic back on. So Mahan asked, how did you practice modeling? How did you practice modeling? So that's his question. Let me turn my mic off and turn yours on.
That's absolutely critical. You've got to choose the right model. Now, I used to speak very fast. I used to stumble and all of that kind of thing. So when I looked at Michael and I saw the way he spoke slowly, he took his time, he never rushed, and it was perfect for me. So I modeled myself on him. And I saw results very, very quickly, to be honest with you. I mean, within a few weeks, I found myself speaking really, really clearly. But that is called the placebo effect. So, but you can use the placebo effect as momentum to get forward. But I can see that I really began to get automatic at about 8 or 9 months of actually doing the program. From about 8 or 9 months, I could see myself not thinking about words, not blocking, being able to speak fluently, being able to say whatever I want to say, being able to stand up in an audience, not concerned that I'm going to block or whatever the case may be. And then I began to get automatic. It's like when you walk, you don't think about how you're going to walk. When you're automatic, when you speak, you don't think about words and how you're going to speak. It just flows. And that's basically what you want to do. So how I did this, I used to spend an hour and a half every day for about a month modeling Michael. I used to take his videos, his audios, I used to learn the content and his rhythm and rate and all of that. Then that's formal modeling, all right? Then I practice that at my workplace. That's called informal modeling. So the word is immersion, by the way. You got to immerse yourself in this game, because speech is a very complex skill, and it's not something you can do ad hoc. You got to do it all the time. So I kind of immersed myself both in formal and informal modeling. So during informal modeling, when I spoke to anybody, my patients, into a class, to the registrars, to the students, or whatever I was speaking about, I just began to model. And you start slowly. You take a conversation at a time, but when you have the concept of immersion, every single time that you are speaking, it's there at the back of your mind that, you know what, I've got a model. I've got to speak like my model. And when you see it's working for you, it becomes addictive, because you can say that, oh, I'm speaking clearly, I'm fluent, but I'm only speaking fluent when I'm modeling. And that becomes addictive. So every single time that you have a successful speaking experience, you say, but I've got this successful speaking experience because I've been modeling. And that has helped me tremendously. And within a few months, I began to get automatic. And remember, modeling is a transitional tool to eventually your own speaking style. I mean, you can hear me speak now. I've got my own speaking style. I've got energy, I'll do whatever. I can say everything I want to say. But I started off with the transitional tool that is modeling Michael. But now, as you can see, I speak in my own way. I got my own energy and I do my own things. But the core strategies I learned from Michael, the inflection, the extension, don't rush, slow down, take your time. You don't get stuck. If anybody asks you a question, just take a second before you answer. Don't jump in. So all of those are important strategies. But those strategies have to be in the context of a positive mindset, of a positive psychology. Otherwise, those things are not going to work for you. So therefore, those 3-day courses and the 7-day courses, they may work for a very short period of time, but eventually that's not how neurology works. And the Pro 90D system is based on pure neurological science, where it's based on building new neurological pathways and networks, and in order for you to have clear speech. And it's not a time that goes by if I don't speak in a big presentation, or I'm sharing something, somebody comes and says, you know what, I just love your energy and I love your eloquence and I love the way you speak and how you make very difficult things very easy. You are able to simplify things. That is a skill for a scientist. If a scientist can crack that, it's fantastic, because if you can take difficult concepts and you can break it down into simple concepts, you can do that. But you need the speech skills to do that. Not only do you need to have the scientific knowledge, but you need to have the skills to be able to do that. And Pro 90D has helped me to do that. And yeah, so it's been a really, really great. It's been a fantastic journey for me. The smooth speech journey has been really fantastic.
One other question that Pooja had, and I'm just going to pose this to you to see what your thoughts are about this. And of course, I have a response to this. And so she asked, well, English is my second language. So Dr. Ismail, as you know, most of my clients are international clients. They're from all over, multiple languages. What are your thoughts? She's saying English is my second language. So can I model Michael in her language? Can she model me in her language? So let me turn your mic back on and turn mine off.
Michael, absolutely. I think it's not so much the content that is important. I mean, we always say that. It's not the content that's important. It's the principle that's important. Because at the end of the day, the skills of extension, of inflection, of spacing your words, of relaxing and breathing applies in every single language. It doesn't only apply in English. So it's not so much the content. Even when we model, when we ask you to do that and to train, we are trying to tell you, forget about the content. It's not the content that's so important. It's the skills that you want to learn. The rhythm, how you inflect, how you extend, how you pause, how you finish your words. And I'm sure you can do that in every other language. So yes, absolutely, you can model in any language, because it's not the content that we're really concerned about. It's the skills that you're concerned about.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Smelt. So I definitely concur with that, being that I have worked with clients from all over the world. Some clients only spoke or speak English when they speak to me. All throughout the day, they speak their own languages. I've had lots of clients like that in all different kinds of languages, literally. And just like Dr. Smith said, the proactive speaking skills, we call them, apply across the board. They might be displayed or implemented a little differently. Inflections may be differently. The way that you extend might be different, but there's always airflow. There's always inflections. There's always body language. There's always these things. So it's a matter of adjusting them for your own language. Now, there's no problem with you actually having two models. You can have a model in your own language. And so you can even have a female model, but I've had lots of females. In fact, I have females now who model me. It's no problem at all. People who English is their second language, they model me, no problem at all. But you can find a model in your own language. And you want to find someone, again, that's going to balance you, that's a very smooth speaker, that really displays the proactive speaking skills that we're talking about. So that is perfectly fine for you to do. Everyone doesn't have to model me. I just have people do that when I'm coaching them because it's easier. You're watching my videos, you're listening to my audios. I try to display the proactive speaking skills, so it's just easier, but certainly you can have another model. So to answer your question, yes, you can model me, even if English is your second language, and it doesn't matter of your gender, right? It doesn't matter what your gender is, okay? Good. Any other questions for Dr. Ismail? Okay, so Dr. Ismail explained to you how he practiced modeling. He explained to you the benefits of it, that the benefits that he's reaping now. He also gave you a timeline where he did it intensively. He immersed himself for about a month or so. Now, that doesn't mean he stopped modeling. So let me just ask, after that month, Dr. Ismail, how much did you actually practice? Let's say formal modeling. Formal modeling becomes less important the further out you go. But let me just ask you, after that month of intensive model, how much did you formally practice? So let me just...
Okay, so after the first month where I formally modeled, I learned the tricks of modeling and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And there was a transition between the formal and the informal, obviously, a few weeks. But once I got the informal modeling going, I didn't need to do formal modeling anymore because I was actually using all the skills of the original formal modeling into the informal modeling. So I didn't need to go back and go into formal modeling. So I think it's a month of extensive formal modeling. Then there's a transition. There is, of course, there's informal modeling, but there's a transition between formal and informal modeling in a few weeks. And once you get over that transition, you go to full-time informal modeling. And once you go to full-time informal modeling, there's really no need for you to do formal modeling anymore because you're modeling all the time. You are using all the techniques and skills. For each person, it wouldn't be the same. There's obviously going to be degrees and variations. Some people may need more formal modeling before they can go to the informal modeling. But for me, that was the kind of timeline that I had. And it took me about 8 months to 9 months before I got automaticity, where I stopped thinking about words. And you know what the beauty is now? Whenever I have to speak impromptu, there is no thinking about words. I don't think about words. I don't see words anymore. It just flows. And even if there's a stumble while I'm speaking, it's a bump in the road because everybody has these fluencies. In fact, I looked at one of the conferences overseas, and I was just looking and just observing how these guys were speaking. I said, oh my gosh, this guy was stumbling, and he's not a stutterer or a stammerer, but he was just stumbling all the time. And you know, and just because I'm more attuned to how people speak, I'm more observant to see how other people speak. And I find that 80 to 90% of people that in my circles are so disfluent you wouldn't believe it, and they don't regard themselves as a stutterer or a stammerer or whatever. So it's also degrees, and it's very, very important that when you are fluent. Okay, this is one thing I just need to say, that the Pro 90D system doesn't care about stuttering and stammering. That this is really important. It cares about converting you into an excellent speaker, into a fluent speaker. And that is absolutely crucial because there's a big difference between being an excellent speaker and not stuttering and stammering. The big difference is that when you are an excellent speaker, you're authoritative, you're impactful, you can move the room. You can take people with you in your conversation, and people just focus on you. You can hear a pin drop. That's an excellent speaker. If you don't stutter or stammer and you are just got a monotonous voice and you don't use all the speaking skills, it doesn't really help you. It really doesn't help you. You may speak clearly, but you are not impactful. So if your aim is to be an excellent speaker, your disfluency will get rid of itself, will take care of itself, because that's just the basics. The stuttering and not stuttering, not stammering, just the basics. You are focusing on being an excellent speaker, an authoritative speaker, an impactful speaker that can change the mood, and that is what you should strive for and what you should aim for. And in some ways, I have achieved that, I think, because I can do that now. I am also very creative now, so I can actually change things on the spur of the moment, and I can get people's attention. But these are skills that anyone can learn. It's not only me, anyone can learn this. Just depends how much you want it. I think the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and the stage 5 is when you are really creative now, and you can play rings around people and in terms of what you want to say. So I'm so thankful for these skills, because it used to be that my speech was a bit of a liability. It's totally an asset for me now, because now I can say whatever I want to say. And I always take an opportunity to speak now. My hands are up for everything, because I know I'm going to get through that conversation. So it's pre-Pro 90D and post-Pro 90D. Work hard, you're going to get there.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. There was one other comment or question. He says one of the things that this gentleman does is overthinks his speech. He says, so will modeling help lead him away from that, where he won't overthink his speech? And the example that I shared with you, as well as what Dr. Ismail said, yes, you will get to the place where you actually stop thinking about speaking, but yet you're able to clearly articulate your thoughts in a way where it just flows, it impacts people. So modeling can help you do that. Here's the thing that I want you to remember, though, is that Dr. Ismail intensively immersed himself for the month. But then after that, and in fact, during that time and after that time, he also immersed himself using modeling in his everyday speech. So every time he spoke, he tried to remind himself to model, and what began to happen is he eventually was able to do that more and more. But that was his intention. Every time I speak, I'm going to model. If you don't do that, this just doesn't work, right? You can practice all day, every day, formally, but if you don't practice in real life, it simply doesn't work. So he immersed himself formally, and he immersed himself informally. That's why it worked for him. So what we want to do is I want to go ahead and invite some of you have already, you're already checking this out, but some of you might not want to, or just might not be the right time, or might not be a good fit for you to work with me personally, and you just want to start with the self-study. So here's a link to the self-study. You should also get an email with the link. Get started with that at least. Get started with the self-study at least. And just remember all the stuff that we're sharing with you today. For others of you who you're professionals, time is of the essence, and you want to accelerate your progress, then you're going to want to consider, at least for now, working with me one-on-one. And so go ahead and click that link. And like I said, what we'll do is we'll look at where you are now. You can ask me all the questions that you want, and we'll look at where you need to go and how I can help you get there. Remember, when you book the session, this is for people who know this is something that they want to do. They just have some questions that they need to get answered. You are in a position where you're ready to move forward now, even if you decide not to, but you're financially able to move forward with coaching now. There's no pressure. Again, you don't have to, but you're able to. So if you're considering it 6 months from now, a year from now, then you're probably going to want to wait to book your session then. All right, great. Really enjoyed you guys. Thank you for your questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Ismail, for being here with us. And we hope to see you the next time. Any other comments, Dr. Ismail?
Is that I took the Pro 90D system 18 months ago, all right? And it has actually totally improved my speech right up to now, and actually I'm improving as each month goes by. And what I'm just trying to say is that this is a long-term effort. It works for the long term, it's for the long haul. But you've got to put in the hard yards early on, and you will reap the benefits in the long term. So this is not, if you are looking for a short-term outcome, this is not a good fit for you. The Pro 90 doesn't work for you at all. You have to have, it's like a long-term investment when you go into bonds and property and things like that. You can only see the benefits years down the line. I'm not saying it's like that. You can obviously improve within months or weeks, but this is a long-term investment. And when you pay whatever it is that you want to pay, and you just don't even think about it, because it's personal development. You are investing in yourself. You're not investing in a car which is going to break down in 5 years, or in a house which will leak in about 10 years. This investment is in yourself. It's personal development. What better way to invest than to invest in yourself? That's the way I see it. And for me, it was the best investment I've made, because it totally changed my life. I've got freedom of speech. I can do whatever I want to say, go wherever I want to say. I'm a big mouth now, by the way, so people are getting tired of me. But anyway, that's a good thing, right? I can defend, discuss, debate, and say whatever I want to say, and that's all because of Pro 90D. It has changed my attitude, it has changed my mindset. And I think that is the critical thing, is the mindset change, and that's what you need.
See you guys the next time. One thing that I just want to affirm that Dr. Ismail said, this is an investment in your speech. If right now your speech has been acting as a liability for you, kind of holding you back, keeping you from opportunities, when you invest in yourself in this process, your speech doesn't just go to not being a liability, it goes to being an asset. That's very different from, just, okay, I can get along, I can say some of the things I want to say. No, your speech becomes one of your greatest assets. So it helps you have better career, better relationships, better social life, better finances, better self-confidence, better life. So keep that in mind as you think about this process. We will see you next time, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Ismail.